Now, welcome to another Let's Talk Some Star Wars, where this time we'll be taking a look at the results of the poll that asked you, how excited are you for the second season of The Bad Batch? As usual, I'll then be reading and responding to some of the comments left on the poll. And so, wasting no time and getting right to it, let's take a look at the results, where we'll see that 32% of people said they were pretty excited and certainly will watch it, 27% said somewhat excited and will likely watch it, 17% super excited and will definitely be watching it, 14% not really all that interested and probably won't watch it, and a final 11% who said not excited at all and have no interest in watching it. And it should be noted that this poll was posted before yesterday's trailer, of course. It was posted roughly 8 days ago, and if you're looking for a review or breakdown or kind of discussion on that trailer, I did it over on my second channel. A link should be popping up on your screen or in the description below. And before getting to the comments, let me just once again say thank you to everyone who votes, comments, and watches any of my videos or who supports this channel over on Patreon. Thank you very much for that. And so let's begin, as we always do, with the top-rated comment, which this time came to us from Derek Lopez, who said, "If Echo reappears in The Bad Batch Season 2, I hope he gets a chance to shine. He was severely underutilized in the first season." And first of all, yes, from the trailers and everything, we do know that Echo will indeed be back in Season 2. That said, I do agree that he was painfully underutilized in the first season and didn't really fill any sort of role on the team other than being kind of the droid character when need be. And sometimes, or in that one episode, he was literally the droid character or mistaken for a droid and sold as a droid. Anyway, I'd say one of the issues with the first season, and mind you, I do like and enjoy the first season. I'm here to discuss the good and the bad. But an issue is that the Bad Batch crew mainly felt like caricatures over actual characters. They all very much filled a sort of cliche role. You had the strong guy, the smart yet kind of oblivious guy, the leader guy, and so on. And it felt like the only one that had any sort of real growth or progression on the actual team who didn't get kicked off the team, like Crosshair. The only one who had any kind of progression was Hunter through Omega. He kind of becomes and slowly embraces the idea of being a father figure to her, which I thought was pretty good. Don't get me wrong. I thought that was a good kind of story arc for him. And yeah, some of the other ones, like Wrecker, by kind of becoming the fun uncle, you could say, he also has some kind of growth or development through Omega as well. And like I was saying before, there is also having to grapple with what's happened to Crosshair and what happened on Kamino at the end of the season with their home being blown up. So it's not like there's nothing here of any emotional substance, and it's also not like I was expecting the most profound character arcs ever out of the show. But I do think we could and should, or I hope we do get a bit more out of them in Season 2, especially again out of Echo, who was kind of an echo in the background. Which it does make sense if that happens, because the first season oftentimes does sort of set the table for bigger and better things to come later on in the series. Moving on, we then have this comment from Night Girl Gaming, who said, "Can't say I care a lot about the Batch, but I'm really excited to see where Crosshair is going. He's definitely one of the more interesting characters introduced recently." And yeah, I agree. He's the one character in the show that really has some levels of depth and complexity going on. For better or worse, you care about him, or at least I cared about him, more than anyone else and more than anyone on kind of that main team. And when he shows up in an episode, it's usually the highlight of the episode, the parts of it that you enjoy the most. And when he doesn't show up, it tends to be one of the weaker episodes, unfortunately. Next up then, we have this one from Ace Gamer Boy 18, who said, "I honestly loved the first season of Bad Batch. It is not a bad show, just had a lot of filler, and so long as the filler is cut down in Season 2, it should be an awesome watch." Yeah, one thing I was really hoping for out of the Bad Batch, after Rebels moved away from it for the most part, was to go the story arc route like Clone Wars did in its later seasons, when we'd get, 3 or 4 episodes strung together and turned into something almost like a mini movie. In my opinion, that's when the series really hit its stride and shined, which isn't to say it wasn't good in the early seasons when it didn't do that anywhere near as much, or that a so-called filler episode can't be good in and of itself. Because I do feel like filler is a bit of an overused term when basically any episode of a show that doesn't push the plot forward in any sort of immediately recognizable, significant way kind of has that label slapped on it. When it may very well, again, have been good and enjoyable in and of itself, which is the real goal, right? You should watch an episode of a show and enjoy it. Or maybe it has some sort of significance for a character that adds to our understanding of that character, or an eventual payoff for that character, or the greater story. Which isn't to say or try to argue that The Bad Batch didn't have filler episodes, or that the filler episodes kind of did something profound for the rest of the story. There was certainly some genuine grade A filler in season 1 of The Bad Batch. Only that, going back to my original hope for story arcs in the show, when you do only have 25 minutes-ish to work with per episode, and you're trying to tell a more or less self-contained 3-act story in that time, going from introduction of a problem to complications around the problem to resolution of problem, you don't really have much time for character growth, to slow down and let them breathe and become something more, to have them just kind of sit around and talk and expressing their feelings, if you will. I know that oftentimes comes off as exposition, but when done well, it can move a story forward, even when there's no action or nothing else around them that is progressing the story. Alright, and our next comment now comes to us from Ezra Motz, who said, as long as it's not the Dad Batch all over once again with the whole crew having to babysit and/or rescue Omega again in every other episode like it was in Season 1, then I'm all for it, fingers crossed. But yeah, I get what you're saying here. It felt like Omega had one of two roles to fill, or sometimes both, in an episode. She either got in trouble and needed to be rescued, or she somehow managed to be the one who saved the day. Or, again, sometimes she would do both. And don't get me wrong, I do totally get it, and for the most part, I'm okay with it, that she is the child insert character. She is the one that's in there for the kids watching to kind of go on the adventure through. So yes, she is going to be the hero of a lot of episodes just for that reason. That said, it would be nice if she, shall we say, integrated with the team a bit better and took on a role with the team, which is what I think the first season really should have tried to bring to a resolution more, that it should have been about her finding her place with the team, and yet in the trailers we're kind of seeing her questioning that again, or wondering if it would have been better if she didn't go with them at all. Which is almost what you could say were the problems with Ahsoka early in the Clone Wars, or in early seasons of it. That she was pushed so hard as the insert character for kids, and that she was trying so hard to prove herself, both in and out of the story in a way. And so, to me at least, I found that kind of annoying. And once she found her place, once she proved herself a bit, once she kind of became confident, again, both in and out of the story, she started to become a really good character, one I enjoyed watching her face her own actual personal challenges. Next up here, then, we have a comment from Leo Pleurodon, who said, worst fear is actually that after Andor, they are going to dumb it down to balance things out for a younger audience, especially when people claim that Andor did not perform very well for whatever reason. Let us see the rise of the Empire with all its consequences. And in a way, I do think Andor has presented an interesting challenge for any Star Wars series that is going to deal with the Empire going forward, especially in animated form where kids are usually kind of the intended target, which is that their cruelty, the Empire's cruelty, is now been on full display, right? We really and truly get to see how bad it is for the people of the galaxy, which isn't to say we didn't already know or figure that out when they blew up an entire planet in the first movie. But seeing, let's say, the more ground-level cruelty from, again, the perspective of just the average person trying to make a life in the galaxy, it kind of hits home in a different way, I think, and it might make it a little harder to see them, the Empire, have or be presented as something more, shall we say, slapstick, or rather incompetent, like Rebels did all too often. Though that said, I wouldn't say Season 1 of The Bad Batch really held back in that department. There were a lot of things done in that first season that you wouldn't normally see out of a kid's show from Disney, like Crosshair shooting his own men or ordering civilians to be killed. And so I do think and hope that The Bad Batch, as it goes along and explores the early days of the Empire, that it can, in a sense, keep pace or match with Andor and what they showed out of the Empire. Maybe not quite on the same level, but close enough where it should work. Our next comment then comes to us from Aso Akil, who said, I wasn't a fan of Season 1, I couldn't even finish it really, and wasn't even planning on watching Season 2, but now I will give it a chance for Cody. He's my favorite clone, and he wasn't given much screen time even in the Clone Wars. I hope they'll do him justice. Yeah, I'm all for more Cody. What happens to him is one of the biggest mysteries left over from the Clone Wars, and one thing I want more out of this series, out of The Bad Batch, is more from other clones. What's going on with them? What ultimately becomes of all of them? I know it's called The Bad Batch, and they will, of course, remain the focus. That's fine. But for me, what happens to the clones has always been one of the more kind of fascinating questions out there since the prequels. What exactly does happen to this massive clone army we see created, since we know they're not around 20 years later in the original trilogy? And don't get me wrong, it's not like they didn't touch on it at all in Season 1. They did quite a bit of that, actually, especially with a clone like Captain Hauser or what happens to Kamino. I just want more of that in general, and I hope The Bad Batch doesn't turn into something of a more generic story, where we just see them join the early rebellion. We've even now seen Bail Organa in the newest trailer. And all of these truly interesting aspects of the time period, like what happens to the clones, are left unexplored. Alright, now let's move on to just a few final comments before wrapping it up, starting with this one from Empire Wizard, who said, "I'm not so much excited, more curious to see where it goes." Then there's this one from Chris Burns Travel, who says, "I remember being disappointed at times with the weekly schedule for Bad Batch. It just seemed like a lot of anticipation for a 22 to 30 minute episode, which always had a filler episode at the worst time. I will definitely be coming off a high from Andor, so this will be quite a change for a lot of fans. I'm 100% going to watch it, but to be completely honest, during the overlap I think Mandalorian is going to take priority, but fingers crossed I'm blown away this season." Also, we have this one from Just Me, who said, "Bad Batch Season 1 had some serious issues. I really liked parts of it while dreading others. I'll watch it once it finishes airing, but not before." Then there's this comment from Lee Walker, who said, "I would like to see them go to more separatist worlds. I feel like there's more that could be done than we saw in Season 1. Also, this comment from Master Tangerines, who said, "First season was fine, but the show just really needs a better focus than we need to pay off our debt by doing random bounty missions." We also have this comment from Matthew Opolinski, who said, "First season had some good setup establishing the new world of the Empire. The big issue was it lacked big time in the character department. If they can remedy that this next season, the show will be able to live on a lot longer than just 2 seasons. If not, then it'll probably lose its audience and get dropped by Disney." We also have this one from Simpletown323, who said, "Bad Batch Season 1 felt aggressively mid with the girl, already forgot her name, basically babysitting her own babysitters." And finally, we have this one from Ben Quadraneros, who said, "It's got potential. Hopefully it can be better with each season, like the previous animated shows helmed by Filoni." Well, that's all I got for you this time. So now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me how excited you are, or maybe are not, for Season 2 of The Bad Batch, especially with that trailer that just dropped yesterday. Whatever the case may be, do leave your comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.